Good evening. Let us make this a quiet hour, not a contest of opinions, not a debate with any church or any tradition. In this room, we are not defending or attacking. We are consenting to be taught from within. If you will, just lay aside, for a little while, the shield of argument and the spear of memory, and let us come bare before the one who is here. There is a presence in the room, and there is a presence within you. The sacrament tonight is not a lesson I give and you take. It is a meeting of that presence with your willingness. For some of you, communion has been a faithful practice. You have kept the feast with bread and with cup, devoutly, regularly, sincerely, and yet, if you are honest in the quiet of your own heart, there has been a whisper, sometimes a hunger after the wine has touched your lips. Is this all? Is this the union my soul knows to be possible? For others, communion carries pain. The forms have wounded. The doors that once sheltered you now feel locked against your spirit, and you cannot go back. You love God, but you cannot make your knees bend where your heart cannot breathe. For still others, you have never had much to do with religion, no altar, no creed, but there is a stubborn, beautiful hunger in you for reality, for the thing behind the names, for truth that does not age and does not break. All of you, all three, are welcome here. No one is outside this circle because the circle is not of human drawing. Now, the question that gathers us is very simple, and because it is simple, it is searching. What is communion when it is lived inwardly, not performed outwardly? What is the substance to which the symbol points? Is there a way to receive the life to which the bread bears witness, and to drink of the presence to which the wine testifies, without imagining that the elements themselves can give it? The answer, which will unfold as we go along, is this. Communion is not being taken away from you. It is being returned to its source, within. The outer may remain for you as a tender reminder, a gracious finger pointing, but the source is never in the bread and never in the cup. The source is God realized as the living presence at the center of your being. Let me say at once so you can be at rest. There is no organization here, no membership, no certificate, no joining, no attempt to take you from your church or to give you a new one. The only bond that holds us is a spiritual bond, the recognition, each in his or her own heart, that the same presence is our life. If you are looking tonight to sign, to enroll, to enlist, there is nothing to sign. If you are fearing that someone will recruit you, there is nothing to recruit. Freedom is sacred here because God is spirit, and that spirit asks for no human chains. And so we begin not by rejecting any altar, but by discovering the altar that makes all others meaningful. We begin not by despising the chalice, but by finding the wine that no vineyard on earth can grow. The name of that wine is presence. The name of that bread is life. The living Christ is not a doctrine about a man, not a story remembered. The living Christ is the activity of God made conscious within you as guidance, as courage, as love that does not ebb with moods, as wisdom that is not borrowed from books. When that is touched, even faintly, you will know why the Master said, I am the vine. But let us not run ahead of ourselves. For this hour, let there be only this intention, to lean inward, to listen, to allow. If your practice has been outward, bless it and let it stand aside for the moment. It will return to you with new radiance when it is no longer asked to carry a weight it cannot bear. If you have been wounded, let the thought come gently. No human form can block an inner door that God holds open. If you have had no practice at all, you are not behind. You are beautifully empty of complication and ready for the simplest truth, that the life you seek is seeking to reveal itself where you are. Therefore, I invite you not to believe, not to agree, but to consent, just silently within yourself, Consent to be shown what communion is when God is its source and you are its altar. We will walk together from the sign to the substance, from the cup to the life, and we will do it without haste, without opposition, and without fear. The table is set within, and as we take our place inwardly, we will find that none are excluded and nothing essential is left out. Now, having drawn near to the inner table, let us speak plainly about why the outer rite cannot carry the inner weight. Forms are not evil. Let that be said without hesitation. Forms can be beautiful, tender, time-honored. They are the love letters our ancestors sent forward in the hope that we would remember God. But a letter, however cherished, is not the beloved who wrote it, and no matter how many times you hold it, it does not embrace you back. The best it can do is point. The best it can do is awaken remembrance. If we ask it to do more, to confer God upon us because we performed it correctly, we ask of paper what only presence can be. You know this already in a dozen simple ways. A wedding ring does not make a marriage. A diploma does not infuse intelligence. A uniform does not give courage. All of these have their place. They witness. They symbolize. But the reality to which they testify must be lived from within, or the symbol grows heavy and at last hollow. So it is with bread and cup. They can be holy when they turn your attention to the Holy One, but they cannot make God consciousness by routine. The life that is God does not flow by schedule, by calendar, by the ticking of a clock or the saying of a set of words. The life that is God is infinite, omnipresent, and moves as a living presence through the consciousness that consents to it. For some of you, there has been comfort, real comfort, in the rite. And in that comfort there is something honest, the quieting of the mind by a familiar path, the gathering of hearts in a common act. For others, the form has been a place to hide, safety from the terror of direct encounter, protection from the risk of being known by God. For still others, the form has become a law, and if you miss it, you feel unclean, and if you keep it, you feel briefly virtuous. And in either case, the ache returns before the day is over. This is the disillusionment that I want us to bless, not to fear. It is not a failure in you to be hungry after a ceremony. It is the honesty of your soul refusing to be satisfied by shadows when the light itself is available. Now here is a moral warning, and I give it to you not as a scold, but as one who has learned it the slow way. Freedom is hard to win. It is much harder to retain. We love the thought of spiritual freedom while quietly bargaining for some substitute that will let us stay safe. And the subtlest substitute is ritual used as a hedge. If I do this, then I am right with God. If I skip this, then I am wrong with God. It feels safe. It is measurable. It can be counted, checked off, approved by others. But in trading living realization for visible compliance, we lose the very freedom we were given. We become dependent on the repetition of an act rather than the renewing of a life. We mistake the calendar for the Christ. The issue here is dependency. When communion is treated as something administered to you, you become a spectator to your own spiritual life. You come to the table as to a performance. Someone else prepares, someone else speaks, someone else hands you God the way a ticket is handed at a door. Oh, it is comforting, and yet blessings cannot be inflicted upon you. They cannot be handed to you as a parcel. The Master never forced healing. He asked, "Do you believe?" And by that question, he brought them into conscious participation, into union. If you sit as a spectator, even to a holy thing, you cut yourself off from the interaction by which God is realized as your very life. And so we must say what is both kind and uncompromising. No outward act can accomplish inward union. It can only point toward it. It can stir a memory. It can call a hush in the mind. It can move the heart to reverence. But union is of consciousness. Union is the branch knowing the vine, not once, not twice, not on holy days, but as its state of being. When we imagine that the distributing hand gives us the divine, we consign ourselves to a lifetime of borrowed sunshine, moments of glow that fade as soon as the bell is rung and the aisle is walked. Then we chase the next service, the next sensation, the next approval, and each excursion leaves the ache untouched. Please do not hear in this a rejection of beauty. Beauty belongs to God, and God has no quarrel with chalices or hymns. What is at issue is weight. What is at issue is asking a sign to be the substance. Our fear of direct contact makes us trust objects more than presence, ceremonies more than communion, approvals more than the quiet witness of the Spirit. But the Christ teaching is not, do this to reach God. The Christ teaching is, abide and let God be revealed as you. Abide. Live in the awareness of the presence and let the presence live as you. This requires no stage. It requires no certificate. It does not exclude the stage or disdain the certificate. It simply refuses to mistake them for the life they sometimes adorn. If you can accept this, even as a possibility, something loosens. You are no longer bound to times and seasons. You are no longer anxious to secure the favor of God by compliance. You are no longer waiting for an authorized hand to make you clean. You are ceasing, right here, to be a spectator. You are taking up your birthright to be a conscious branch of the living vine, to receive wisdom, knowledge, intelligence, virtues, powers, vitalities, immortalities, not as a prize for performance, but as the natural flow of God through the awakened I within. And, you may find that what once felt necessary now becomes meaningful in a higher way, not as a requirement, but as a reminder, not as a gate, but as a window. Let us then, let the forms be what they are, fingers pointing. Let us honor the finger and not mistake it for the moon. Let us cherish the letter and then faithfully meet the one who wrote it. For if we continue to require the outer, to carry what only the inner can bear, we will forever recalibrate the ritual and never find rest. But if we dare the inward turn, if we consent to abide, the ache is met at its root. Then whether you break bread in a sanctuary or sip water at your kitchen sink, the sacrament is the same. The presence realized, the life received, the union actual. And that, beloved, is the weight no right can carry, and no right need carry when God is known within. Now, since our talk has brought us to that word abide, let us let the Scripture say what I could only circle. The secret has been in plain sight all this time. I am the vine, ye are the branches. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself, no more can ye, except ye abide in me. This, friends, is not poetry set to religious music. This is mechanics. This is how life lives as you. And when I say mechanics, I mean inevitability, not reward and punishment, not favor and disfavor, but the way sap moves and fruit appears because it must. For some of you, Scripture has been a comfort. The words have rocked you to sleep when life was too loud. For others, Scripture has been a wall. The words were used to fence you out or fence you in. For still others, Scripture has been a stranger. You've suspected there was a voice in it for you, but no one had introduced you. Tonight, let the 15th of John acquaint itself with you as if for the first time. Close your eyes, if you like, and picture a living vine, a tree if that is easier, rooted, rising, spreading, alive with an unseen circulation. Now see a branch, yourself, not attached by memory or by doctrine, but by living connection. This is communion, not a visit to a holy place, not a sip from a holy cup, but the inflow of holy life, because you are where life lives. Think this through, and you will feel the relief in it. The branch does not pray to the vine for sap. The branch does not make appointments. The branch does not bargain. If I bear 3 clusters this month, will you send a little more life? The branch abides, and because it abides, the life of the vine is the life of the branch, and fruit is the inevitable disclosure of that hidden union. When the Master says, "Without me ye can do nothing," he is not condemning, he is describing. Severance is not a sentence handed down by a frowning judge. It is simply the loss of supply. If the connection is cut, even by a hair's breadth of self-sufficiency, the flow ceases to be felt. The vine has not lost its wealth. The branch has lost its place of receiving. Do you see how this reframes Christ for us? The Christ is not a distant person to appease. The Christ is the life of God individualized as the living vine. The Christ is principle, ever-present, self-revealing, universal, made particular as the consciousness that must be realized within you. When the gospel says, "Abide in me," it is not ordering you into a posture of flattery. It is inviting you into your native position, branch and vine, self in God, God in self, without seam, without struggle. I and the Father are one is not a boast. It is the primary biology of the soul. Now, if you will accept that, even tentatively, much of our religious confusion dissolves. We have been praying as if to convince a far-off owner to ship grace by the truckload. We have turned communion into a mail-order catalog. Pick out your blessing and wait at the mailbox. But the branch does not mail-order sap. It yields, it consents, it remains. And in remaining, it discovers that grace was never sent. Grace is the very life current of being. You cannot be deprived of it except by imagining yourself elsewhere than in God. And even then, the deprivation is of awareness, not of actual supply. The vine does not go lean because a branch forgot its source. The branch goes dull until it remembers. So, what is the bread then? What is the wine? We will take that up more explicitly in a few minutes, but hear this much now. The bread is the substance of life that moves invisibly as vitality, intelligence, purity, stability, the very body of God felt as your existence. The wine is the spirit of joy, courage, love, freedom, the buoyancy of God felt as your own heart lifting. These are not earned. They are not wages for right ritual. They are the outflow of the vine life, and they appear in your experience in the exact measure that you abide. Not strive, not posture, abide. And here is where the Christ teaching rescues us from superstition. If fruit appears on a branch, no one runs to praise the branch for its moral excellence. And if fruit is lacking, no one curses the vine as stingy. We look to the connection. We ask, is there something choking the flow? Is there a kink in the hose? Translate that now into your own inner life. When anxiety tightens, when resentment flares, when fear sits heavy, do not accuse God. Do not punish yourself. Do not run to the calendar. Look to the connection. Ask, where has my awareness wandered? What have I trusted instead of presence? Then return. Return where? Not to a building, not to a ceremony, but to that silent inner oneness where God is the very life of you. This is why communion cannot be a spectator event. Blessings cannot be inflicted upon you from a platform. The gospel narratives always return to conscious participation. Do you believe? According to your faith, be it unto you. These were not passwords. They were acts of connection. In that moment, the sufferer ceased to be an object of pity and became a branch consciously taking its place in the vine. And immediately, the flow that never ceased was felt, and healing, supply, guidance, wisdom began to show forth as fruit, not as a miracle imported from the outside, but as the inevitable showing forth of inner union. Now, I want to say this very gently and very plainly. If you are waiting for an outer authority to grant you access to God, you are like a branch waiting for a committee meeting to be scheduled before sap can move. It is not irreverent to bypass the committee. It is obedience to the Master. Abide in me, and I in you. This is your Christ-given right and your Christ-given responsibility. Freedom is hard to win. It is much harder to retain. You will be tempted to replace abiding with performing, because performing is visible and earns applause. But fruit does not come by applause. Fruit comes by union. Therefore, let Scripture be to you tonight, not a text to be quoted, but a life to be entered. Let the words, I am the vine, ye are the branches, move from your ears to your bones. Say within yourself, even now I choose to abide. I choose to yield. I choose to let the presence be the life of me. Not by effort, not by will, by consent. And as you do, you will begin to sense, softly at first, the inner current, that divine substance moving as awareness. That, beloved, is communion, not the hour of observance, but the state of being. And in a few moments we will discover very practically where in you this abiding is recognized and how, in the simplest way, to live there. Now we are going to stop describing and begin doing. Not a performance, not an effort to manufacture feeling, just the simplest turn of attention, if you will, just silently within yourself. Think of that word, I. Don't say it with your lips. Say it within. Let it be a whisper that doesn't disturb a leaf on a tree. I. Now, if you noticed, as soon as you said I, a parade of associations tried to hitch a ride. Your name, your age, your work, the story you have told yourself about yourself, the condition that has troubled you, the hope that has followed you. All of that comes trotting along, eager to wear the word. Gently, kindly, let them stand aside. We are not rejecting them. They have their proper place in the human scene. But they are not the I we are after. Tonight we are not addressing the resume self, the history self, the success or failure self. We are drawing near to the I that is aware before a single thought arises. Just silently within yourself, think of that word, I, again, and this time do not let it gather any adjectives. No rich I, no poor I, no sick I, no well I, no guilty I, no proud I, only I. Notice that even without the decorations, you are. There is an awareness here, present, open, without story. Rest there a moment. Don't try to hold your breath. Don't try to hold a posture in your mind. Simply notice that you are aware, and that this simple awareness is untouched by the weather of your thoughts. This I is the doorway. When the Master said, I and the Father are one, he was not handing us a weapon for argument. He was revealing identity, not the personal, boastful I that struts or collapses under praise and blame, but the I that is one with Source, the point at which the vine life meets the branch consciousness. That I is not a person among persons. It is presence individualized. It is the Christ of you, the God awareness that can say without arrogance and without fear, I live, yet not I, but the life of God lives itself as me. Try this with me. Quietly inside declare I, and then add nothing, just I, and then listen, not with ears, but with that inner listening that notices a room grow still. Listen for the echo that answers from within. You may not hear words. You may sense a softening. You may feel nothing at all, and yet know that something in you has stopped grappling. Do not grade the moment. Do not reach for sensation. The vine does not strain to feel sap. It abides, and the flow is inevitable. Now, to help clear the way, let us see the two I's a little more plainly. There is the little I, small, hard-working, anxious, always managing, always comparing. That little I is the custodian of memory and the accountant of merit. It is not evil. It is a useful servant in the marketplace and on the calendar, but it is not the life of you. Then there is the I, capital, quiet, innocent, prior to thought, prior even to the feeling of I am this or that. This I does not hurry, it does not defend, it does not broadcast itself. It simply is, and out of its isness proceeds guidance, safety, sufficiency. When you say I in this way, without story, you are touching the place where branch meets vine. This is communion. You cannot be forced into it. Blessings cannot be inflicted. The door opens from the inside by your consent, by your willingness to be still enough to recognize what has always been so. So again, just within, say I, and then yield. Yield means stop leaning on your own description of yourself for a few breaths. Consent to be known by the presence rather than to insist on introducing yourself. Let the infinite announce itself in its own language, which is silence becoming awareness, awareness becoming peace, peace becoming direction. We will be very quiet for a brief space now, not as a ceremony, but to give you to yourself. Let your hands be at rest, your attention gathered, and within simply declare I and be still. So, all right. If you felt a warmth, thank God for it. If you felt dryness, thank God for it. The reality is not in the sensation. The reality is in the recognition. The sacrament began the instant you let the word I be the name of presence rather than the label of personality. You see, the outer rite can be postponed, repeated, altered, but this inner saying of I is available at a bus stop, at a desk, in a hospital room, in a kitchen, while the kettle comes to boil. It is the shortest prayer because it is the truest name. And in that name, the branch returns to its place, and the life current resumes being noticed. Let this become practical. When fear rises and begins to dictate terms, what to do, when to run, do not argue with it on its level. Do not rush to promise God a dozen ceremonies in exchange for safety. Stop. Within, say I, and wait 3 breaths. In that pause, something shifts authority. You have moved your identity from the pressured little I into the unpressured I, and immediately the vine life can disclose a next step, a word, a calm. When resentment rehearses its speech and the tongue is hot, try the same turn. Within I, and let the heat find no handle. When confusion multiplies choices until you are stunned, within I, and watch as one thing, simple and right-sized, comes to the front. And please understand, this is not hypnosis, not self-suggestion. I have no talent for tricks and no interest in them. This is the law of being made conscious. This is the description the Master gave us because he lived it. Abide in me. Without me, ye can do nothing. When you rest as I, you are abiding. When you run as little I, cut off and alone, you wither in your own imagination. The vine does not withdraw, the branch forgets. And remembering is as near as the next, I declared in quiet truth. You may say, but how do I know I am not just talking to myself? By fruit, by demonstration, when you return to I and the heart settles, when the jaw softens and a compassion you did not manufacture rises toward the very one who wounded you, when an idea for provision arrives unforced, when the body finds a rhythm of ease without your micromanagement, this is the vine life proving itself. Not always with fireworks, often with the quiet inevitabilities of health, right activity, sufficiency, and the strange courage to do the next kind thing. One more point, because it will save you much wandering. The inner eye is not an emergency exit only. It is a dwelling. Visit, yes, and then learn its furniture, its light. In the morning, before the news, I. At noon, between tasks, I. In the evening, when the world grows shadowy and the mind wants to replay its film, I. 5 seconds, 15, a minute. Not as a feat to be admired, but as a returning to your nature. Over time, the gap between returns shortens, not by strain, but by love, and you find that you are abiding more than departing. Now we are not leaving anything behind that is real. We are letting the real take its rightful place. The bread and the wine, we will see, are names for what the eye receives as substance and joy. But without this I known and loved, they remain pictures in a book. With this I alive in you, every picture becomes a window, and every window opens on the same landscape. God as your life, God as your wisdom, God as your sufficiency, and, in that landscape, there is no stranger, no beggar, no outsider, because the same I lives in all. So carry this with you, not as a technique to master, but as your birthright to remember. When you say I within yourself, without ornament and without argument, you have taken your seat at the true table. You have stopped waiting for a bell to ring and discovered that the banquet is ongoing. The sacrament does not begin when a cup is lifted. It begins when the inner eye is recognized as the point of union with God. Hold to that gently but firmly, and watch the day change, not by magic, but by the simple fact that the life of the vine is the life of the branch, and you, beloved, are that branch. Now let us come, very simply and very reverently, to this matter of bread and wine. We are not going to scold the table or despise the cup. No, we are going to let them speak their true language. Bread and wine are signposts. They are beautiful, ancient gestures that point beyond themselves. But the Christ substance is not material food, and the Christ joy is not fermented drink. If we try to chew divine life with teeth, we will end up with flour on the tongue and a puzzled heart. If we try to swallow spirit through the throat, we will end up with a warmed body and an unawakened soul. The sign is kind. The source is within. The right is dear. The reality is God realized as your very life. What then is this realized presence? Not a mood, not a hush generated by candlelight. Realized presence is the felt, governing awareness of God here, without the bell, without the vestment, without the calendar. It comforts when the nervous system shakes. It corrects when the old habits want the wheel back. It nourishes in the middle of a busy corner of town where no one knows your name. It is not emotion, though it may quiet or lift emotion. It is not thought, though it may illumine thought. It is the awareness that the I within, this very awareness by which you are listening, is one with God, and that oneness is the law, the substance, the life, the wisdom, the protection, the sufficiency of your being. When that is known, help does not arrive. Help is present. Guidance does not descend. Guidance is the natural light of where you are abiding. Now take those words of the Master that for centuries have gathered around tables and altars. This is my body. This is my blood. Hear them as consciousness language, not chemistry. The body he speaks of is not anatomy carved up for distribution. It is the manifested life of spirit, the Word made flesh, the invisible disclosed as tangibility, the divine substance by which real health, purity, stability, and right action appear. To eat that body is to receive, as one's very identity, the life that flows from God into the awareness that consents. And the blood is life. The blood is the inner wine of joy, courage, love, the buoyancy that keeps the soul from sinking in the heavy waters of the world. To drink that blood is to let the Christ joy and Christ freedom circulate as the heartbeat of your day. None of this can be poured from a bottle. None of this can be sliced from a loaf. It is realized or it is missed. You see, when he said, "Except ye eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, ye have no life in you," he was not sending us to a bakery and a vineyard. He was calling us into assimilation. He was saying, "Let my consciousness of oneness with the Father be your consciousness. Let my reliance upon the invisible be your reliance. Let my love be your love. As you take this in, not once but as a life, you will discover that your health, your peace, your provision, your usefulness are not human achievements. They are the natural fruit of divine substance recognized and allowed to live as you. This, beloved, is Eucharist, thanksgiving, because life is present, received, and revealed. Paul saw through this confusion of outer with inner, and I want his clear voice to be heard in ours tonight. He said in a dozen ways that outer circumcision availeth nothing, that the letter killeth, but the Spirit giveth life, that the kingdom is not meat and drink, but righteousness and peace and joy in the Holy Spirit, that neither circumcision nor uncircumcision, but a new creature and inner transformation is the measure. Translate that now without argument. The Christ is not ritualized, the Christ is realized. An outer mark on the body, an outer washing with water, an outer breaking of bread, these without inner birth are shadows. With inner birth they are honest remembrances. But remember, remembrance is not replacement. This is the lost teaching hiding in plain sight. Inner communion, an inward receiving of life moment by moment, makes no hour, no element necessary for access. If you wish to keep the outer supper, keep it. Keep it with gratitude. Keep it as a gentle pointer to the true table. But do not, under any fear or habit, permit it to stand between you and the immediacy of God. If you walk out of a service and the room feels empty unless you clutch at the afterglow, that is not the failure of the rite. It is the reminder that the rite was never the source. Return within to I. There the table is set again without linen and without human hands. And here is a guardrail offered in love. If you find the ritual helpful, let it be as remembrance. Do this in remembrance of me, not as a substitute for the inner contact. Remembrance means turn the mind to the realized presence that was his consciousness and is given to be yours. Substitute means depend on a date, a distributor, a mouthful. Remembrance opens the heart to receive from God directly. Substitute closes the heart into a calendar. Freedom is hard to win. It is much harder to retain. The temptation will come to trust the visible because it can be verified by your neighbor's eye. Resist kindly. Yield inwardly. Take your place as branch in vine, and let the sap prove itself by the fruit that appears without fuss. How will you know you have truly eaten and drunk at this inner table? By demonstration. The body of spirit digested as awareness becomes health that does not panic at symptoms, steadiness that does not collapse under headlines, purity that does not need a policeman. The wine of spirit received as joy becomes forgiveness where grudge once lived, generosity where fear once rationed, a buoyancy that rises not from lucky breaks, but from unbreakable union. If you do not yet see this, do not despair. Simply return. Say within, I, and abide. The flow is constant. The noticing is learned. Let us then allow bread to be bread and wine to be wine, good gifts of God in their own order, and let us meet what they signify here, now, when within yourself you consent to I, no ornament, no argument. You are receiving the true bread from heaven, the substance of life itself, when without cause in the world, a joy lifts and carries you into courage or tenderness. You are drinking the wine the world cannot pour. This is my body, this is my blood, not on the tongue, in the heart, in the consciousness. And as you live this way, abiding, remembering, returning, the sacrament ceases to be an event and becomes a life. Then whether your hands hold a chalice or a teacup, whether you stand beneath a steeple or beneath a sky, the same presence nourishes, corrects, comforts, and governs. And that, dear friends, is the Eucharist restored to its source, divine life received as conscious presence, the Christ not performed, but realized. Now let us be very honest with ourselves, kindly honest. Why do we prefer ritual? For some it has been a cradle. It rocked you when life was noisy, and in that rocking you found your first hints of God. For others, it has been a shield. You stood close to the forms because you were afraid of mistake or of criticism, and the forms gave you cover. For still others, ritual has been a calendar you could trust. I did it this week, I am all right. A measurable act which the neighbors could see and you could check off before sleep. None of this makes you wrong, it makes you human. We like what we can see, what can be started at 10 o'clock and finished by 10:15, what comes with a receipt. Ritual offers certainty. You can set it, stage it, perform it, and in the performing gain a sense of progress. It offers belonging. The same words on many tongues, the same gestures seen by many eyes, and you are not alone. It offers an I did it you can point to, a badge on the lapel of conscience that says, I have kept my end. And in a world where so little is predictable, these are comforts not to be sneered at. But hear me, comforts are not the same as communion. A photograph of a loved one can soothe a lonely hour. It cannot generate the warmth of the loved one's arms. A menu can be read and admired. It cannot nourish. In the same way, managed religion can quiet the nerves. Only direct contact satisfies the soul. Look around the human scene and you will see the same mechanism dressed in different clothes. A man works and works for a figure in the bank and, upon reaching it, finds the satisfaction already dissolving in a larger figure calling his name. A woman dreams of the ring, the ceremony, the headlines in her own circle, and after the music stops, she discovers that companionship requires a deeper thing than a photograph album. A very fine person earns a title, an office, a mention in the press, and for a week the attention buoys him up. Then a newer story pushes his aside, and he returns to the same inner ache he had before. Translate that now into the holy. We can chase the assurance of a spotless attendance record, a collection of certificates, a precise observance of sacred hours, and in the mirror say, I have done it, and still put our head on the pillow with a hunger. The hunger is not a failure. It is the God hunger saying, come straight to me. And why do we dodge that directness? Because direct contact is not under our management. Ritual can be scheduled. Presence arrives when you yield. Ritual is graded by observers. Presence speaks in the secret place where no applause follows. Ritual can be rehearsed. Presence requires honesty, sometimes tears, sometimes silence that stretches longer than the program allows. In direct contact, there is no mediator to blame, no committee to soothe the conscience. It is you and the I that is one with God. That is frightening to the little I because it loses its bargaining power. That is liberating to the true I because it recognizes home. Now here is a law of this path, and I want to set it before you while the room is warm with love. After you have tasted inner freedom, after you have known, even for a moment, the stillness that does not depend on candles or choirs, the temptation to return to externals will come, and, it will come twice as hard. Freedom is hard to win. It is much harder to retain. Lot's wife looked back. The Galatians were asked, having begun in the Spirit, are ye now made perfect by the flesh? This is not ancient gossip. It is your Monday morning. The week presses, a fear catches in the chest. A friend asks what you have done, and the hand reaches for the calendar, for the rule book, for the visible assurance. Do not condemn yourself for that reach. Notice it. See it as a signal that awareness has wandered from I to I. And then, this is maturity. Return, within, quietly, I, for 3 breaths, for 30 seconds, for as long as it takes for the inner government to resume. All of this must be said without a whip in the hand, because shame cannot usher you into God. But I will not flatter you with soft evasions either. To exchange the living Christ for a schedule is to appear fed while remaining hungry. To hide in a crowd around the altar and refuse the altar within is to borrow a warmth you can never keep. We are not children forever. Spiritual self-responsibility is simply this: you cannot outsource your contact with God. You may be helped by a teacher, comforted by a service, strengthened by a hymn, but the turning, the consenting, the abiding, that is yours. Blessings cannot be inflicted upon you. You must open. Some will say, "But I fear losing my people if I trust the inner way." Beloved, you do not have to trade people for presence. We will speak of fellowship in its time. For now, recognize the difference between social proximity and spiritual union. You can sit in a full hall and be alone from God. You can be alone in a kitchen and be in the communion of saints. The only bond that holds in storm is a spiritual bond, and no membership card can forge it. Therefore, let ritual, when you use it, be a window, not a wall. Let it be remembrance, not replacement. If the heart starts leaning on the gesture as if it were the source, stop very gently, go within, and take your rightful place as branch in vine. And here is a practice that will save you many detours. When the itch for a visible assurance rises, when you want to prove to yourself or to a friend that you are all right, pause. Within, ask without words, am I seeking applause or presence? If applause, smile at yourself and return. If presence, it will answer by being there. Help will show itself not as a pat on the back, but as a steadiness in the belly, a clarity in the next step, a love that does not need to be noticed to be real. This is not grim. This is joy learning to live without props. So, kindly, firmly, let us admit why we have preferred ritual. It felt safe, it offered belonging, it granted a measurable "I did it." And let us admit the cost. The soul remained hungry while the face looked satisfied. Then let us choose maturity, not as a scolding but as a birthright. You yourself, without human obligation, must spiritually hold fast. Give up all others, not people, not kindness. Give up the substitutes, the leaning on what cannot feed you, and cling, as in a good marriage, single-mindedly, to the presence within. Then forms, if you keep them, will shine. If you set them aside, nothing will be missing. The fear will thin, the belonging will deepen, and the safety you sought in schedules will be replaced by the only safety there is, God realized. Now about fellowship, because I promised you we would not leave you standing alone in a brave, cold wind. For some, the word fellowship means the hall and the coffee and the shoulder you know by name. For others, it has meant belonging by rules. So many attendances, so many approvals, a sense of safety because a committee says you are in good standing. For still others, it is a memory of warmth that soured when the forms grew louder than the love. Take heart. We are not going to strip you of belonging. We are going to return it to its source. First, the disclaimer that is not a rebuke, but a freedom. There is nothing to join here. No card to sign, no badge to wear, no dues to pay, no hierarchy to please, no ladder to climb. No one can admit you, no one can expel you. The only bond that holds, and it holds in hospital rooms and on sidewalks, and in the quiet before dawn, is a spiritual bond. The moment you realize the presence, God as the life of you, the circle is present. Whether there are 2 or 200 in a room, the fellowship is the same because its substance is the same. God realized. Do not make a club of this. The temptation is old. To freeze a living river into an organization, to trade spirit for structure because structure can be counted. I am not condemning structure. I am warning you not to mistake it for life. Freedom is hard to win. It is much harder to retain. Therefore, hear me clearly. The fellowship of the inner Christ cannot be manufactured by proximity. It appears in the instant of recognition. Where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there am I. Gathered in my name does not mean a label on the door. It means gathered in the nature of I, in the consciousness that says, I and the Father are one. In that gathering, whether in one heart alone or in many hearts at once, there is church. Now, with that freedom comes responsibility, because nobody can tell you which teaching is true. You must measure it yourself against demonstrable truth, not cleverness, not novelty, not the comfort of hearing your preference echoed. Measure by fruit. Does this inner way, when you practice it, bring peace that does not depend on applause? Does it heal fear's tantrum, quiet the compulsion to retaliate, open channels for supply without scheming, make you kinder in your own kitchen? If not, set it aside, bless it, and return to what bears fruit. Blessings cannot be inflicted, and truth is not an opinion you vote into office. Truth is that which, when realized, demonstrates itself as life, wisdom, integrity, love. Let us reframe church without insult to any steeple. Church is not timber and stone. Church is not Tuesday's committee or Sunday's schedule. Church is the gathered awareness of God. It is the sanctuary that appears when one or more agree, not in doctrine but in presence. You can be in church on a bus if within you say I and consent. You can be in church when you wash dishes, when you sign a contract, when you hold the hand of someone who is afraid and, without speaking, know the I within them is the same I within you. There the altar is set. There the choir sings in silence. There the sacraments are received as life and joy, substance and guidance. But will I be alone if there is no membership? No, no. This is the paradox that turns into comfort the moment you test it. The less you lean on a roll book for belonging, the more you discover the living bond. There is a spiritual band around this globe, a communion without borders and without uniforms. At every hour of day and night somewhere, someone is turning within, saying I without ornament, consenting to presence. When you do the same, you are not adding your voice to a crowd. You are entering a oneness already whole. And because there is only one I, not many competing egos, at no time are you outside the reach of that love. You may sit alone in a small apartment, and in the instant you turn, know that you are held, not by sentiment, but by the nature of God being all. Let us keep this very practical so it does not drift into poetry. How do we live this fellowship? We abide and we recognize. When a name crosses your mind, a child far away, a friend traveling, a neighbor difficult to love, do not strain to send thoughts across a distance. Do not try to manage outcomes with mental fingers. Simply within say I and silently acknowledge the same I is the life of you. That is spiritual fellowship. You will feel no strain because you are not manufacturing a bridge. You are recognizing the bridge that already is. At times you will be led to write, to call, to give, to correct. When it rises from I, it will be clean, unpressured, effective. This is how we pray without ceasing, by dwelling in I and letting recognition become the atmosphere in which we meet every face. And here is a guardrail for our freedom. The human mind loves to badge itself, even with spiritual-sounding badges. Resist making a slogan of this. Resist forming a new in-group defined by invisible pride. We are the ones who know the inner way. The instant you feel that heat, stop, return, I. Let the present strip off the metal. The only distinction that matters is the one the Master knew. Those who hear and those who do. Not those who claim and those who don't, but those who abide and therefore demonstrate. If we must speak of belonging, let it be this. We belong to God by nature, and we belong to one another by recognition. So, beloved, take your place in a fellowship that no hand can stamp and no storm can tear. Do not forsake the assembling of yourselves together. Assemble in awareness. Gather in the kitchen, in a park, in a quiet room, or in a hall like this, but gather in the name, in the nature of I. Then forms will either serve or fall away without loss. Then loneliness turns from a verdict into a signal. Time to return within, to where all are one. Real fellowship is not institutional proximity. It is shared realization of presence. And as you live there, abiding, remembering, returning, you will find that your world fills with brothers and sisters you never had to enroll, and home stops being a place you go and becomes the life you are. Now we must speak plainly about proof. Not the proof of argument, not the proof of a louder voice, but the only proof that ever satisfied a hungry soul. Life changed. For some of you, this will come as a relief. You have always suspected that doctrines, however noble, cannot carry the day if they do not touch the kitchen table and the midnight hour. For others, it may sting a little because we have trained ourselves to equate correctness with holiness. For still others, this is the missing piece you have been waiting for. How do we know when inner communion is not a theory, but the living Christ moving as our very life? The Master did not leave us in a fog here. By their fruits ye shall know them. Not by their phrases, not by their robes, not by the size of their halls, but by fruit, peace where storms used to rule, guidance where confusion used to multiply, healing where fear had a home, moral stability where habit once dragged us in circles. Let us set the standard and set it kindly but firmly. Spirituality that cannot be lived is only words. A Christ teaching that cannot demonstrate itself in the small and large hours is a set of syllables on the wind. Do not be offended by that. Be liberated. It means you do not have to master a dictionary of holy terms. You have to abide. If branch abides in vine, sap flows, leaf appears, blossom comes, fruit hangs of its own law. If branch argues about sap, paints leaves on with a brush, and ties fruit with a string for the neighbors to admire, winter will expose the game. Demonstration is simply this: the natural, effortless appearing of harmony when consciousness abides in its source. Without that abiding, we are branches cut off, good for a moment of show, doomed to wither. With it, we are conduits, and life does what life always does: expresses. Now, what is demonstration not? It is not showmanship. We are not going to set up spectacles, stack testimonies like trophies, or turn the sanctuary into a stage where God must perform on cue. It is not magical thinking, no hocus-pocus formulas whispered to bully the universe into our plan. And it is not bargaining. You cannot trade promises of better behavior for divine favor. God is not an idol to be fed. God is the life of you to be realized. Demonstration is not a parade. It is evidence. Evidence of alignment with reality. Evidence that the I within, consciously recognized as one with the Father, is governing, illumining, harmonizing the details of experience without human strain. Let me make this very practical, very close. A fear rises. It may be about the body, the child, the bill, the news on the screen. The heartbeat picks up, the thoughts begin to race down imagined alleys. Stop. Within, just silently, no ornament, bring yourself into remembrance. I and the Father are one. Abide there for a breath or three, not as a technique to force calm, but as a recognition of truth. Watch what occurs. Often, not always in the first second, but faithfully as you abide, the fear begins to drain away as if someone pulled a plug. The circumstances may not have moved an inch yet, but the panic no longer owns the room. Clarity steps in, not a full blueprint perhaps, but the next right step, clean and unpressured. That is demonstration. Peace establishing itself as the government of your mind because you returned to source. Or consider resentment. You have rehearsed the injury for months till it is sharp enough to cut new friends. Then one day you are simply tired of your own story. You turn within, and you let the presence address it. You do not mount a moral campaign. You admit, I cannot forgive by effort, but the love that is God can live itself as me. You sit for a few minutes and something softens. You do not excuse wrong. You relinquish poison. The picture of that person appears with less heat attached. Or a small prayer rises for their good you would not have permitted yesterday. No trumpet blows, but the grip loosens, and over days you find you are not checking their name on every page of your life. That is demonstration, not human niceness, but divine love operative where willpower had failed. Supply? Ah, yes, we have all tried to manufacture supply by mental push or by frantic hustle. And, we have learned what it costs in sleep and in integrity. Now take the same need and enter inner communion. Within I, not to get, but to recognize the source. You remember that the vine does not look out the window for sap. The vine knows it. You rest in the fact that infinite life includes intelligent provision and right activity. And then, this is where you test truth. Watch the outer life. A door opens that asks for your gift, not your flattery. A piece of work appears that fits your nature as precisely as a key in a lock. Or an expense shrinks, a needless desire fades, a creative idea rises that renders the old problem obsolete. That is demonstration, not money rained down by miracle, but life expressing as sufficiency, order, right place, right time. And because we are not afraid of the body in this room, let me speak plainly. Bodily improvement as the byproduct of inner peace is a real thing, and many here know it. I am not promising you a circus of instant transformations. I am saying that when inner conflict lessens, when fear, guilt, resentment, and loneliness are met with realized presence, the body, which has been carrying those storms, often responds as any instrument would when the player stops pounding it. Sleep returns. Blood pressure eases. The knot in the stomach unclenches. Sometimes, yes, a symptom that terrified you dissolves without a medical explanation. Sometimes the guidance is to seek help, and the help is found, and the body mends quicker than the chart predicted. In each case, the point is not to boast. The point is to acknowledge the law. Harmony appears as fruit when we abide. Now, remember this law that protects your freedom and keeps you from superstition. Blessings cannot be inflicted upon you. They are not forced on a closed door. Even the Master, with presence walking as his very being, would ask, "Do you believe that I can do this?" Not because he needed the compliment, but because conscious union is the channel. Do you consent? Will you open? When you say yes, sometimes with words, sometimes with a sigh that is more honest than prayer language, you have brought yourself into line with the truth that was already true. And the moment that line is made, demonstration has a way to appear. You may ask, but what if nothing happens? Something always happens when you abide. It may not be the newspaper headline your ego drafted, but peace is an event. Guidance is an event. Integrity restored is an event. And these are not consolation prizes. They are the way God moves a life from confusion to order. Measure your path, then, not by how many stories you can tell at a microphone, but by the quiet revolutions that make your days different. Reactions replaced by responses. Haste replaced by holy pace. The tongue that once rushed to slice, now pausing until love can do the talking. This is verification. This is how inner communion proves itself, by fruit. Therefore, beloved, do not rest in correct phrases. Rest in presence. Keep returning, abiding, remembering, returning, and let the sap do its work. Test it in the kitchen, in the traffic, in the doctor's office, at the bank. If truth is truth, it will demonstrate. If not, set it aside and go where life lives. You yourself, without human obligation, must spiritually hold fast to what bears fruit. And as fruit appears, peace, guidance, healing, moral stability, give thanks not to a ritual performed, but to the living Christ realized as your very life. Now, how do we live this all day? For some, this will be the easiest part. You have already been stealing moments at sinks and stoplights to whisper, "I." For others, this is the hard part. You know how to be holy at 10 o'clock on Sunday, but find noon on Tuesday a wilderness. For still others, this is the missing piece. You have believed the truth in theory and wondered why it did not change your days. The answer is not a larger ritual. The answer is a smaller, nearer rhythm. Abide, remember, return. Take this as a simple law of your new life. Many short turnings are stronger than one long ordeal. We are not trying to hold our breath until heaven notices. We are learning the natural breath of spirit, an inward consenting, frequent, light, real. So begin where you are. Before you leave the bed, before your feet hunt for slippers, close the eyes just a moment and within say I, not the noisy I of your plans, but the living I that is one with the Father. Rest there in no words or in the simplest. Father within, here. You will not feel fireworks. Often you will feel only a small quiet, as if the day has agreed to meet you kindly. That is enough. Rise from that. Carry it into the first transitions. You lift the cup, coffee, tea, water, and before the first sip, pause. I acknowledge, this life in me is God. The day will attempt to rush you. You will not fight the day. You will not fight anything. You will remember. At the threshold of the door, I. At the car door, I. At the red light, I. At the blank space before you sign your name, I. Not as superstition, not to bribe life into cooperating, but as recognition. I and the Father are one. Each pause does not pull you from life. It sinks you into life. In time, you will not have to program these turnings. The heart will touch the source as naturally as the branch drinks from the vine. Let me set before you gently the difference between concentration and communion. Concentration strains to reach. Communion consents to what is already here. Concentration contracts the brow. Communion opens the heart. Concentration is a human attempt to pull God across a distance. Communion is the humble recognition that no distance exists. Therefore, do not practice effort, practice receptivity. Sit a few times a day, not long, 2 minutes, 3, 5, if joy invites it. Sit without bargaining, without shopping for experiences. Simply say, I within, and let thought settle like snow in a glass when the hand stops shaking it. Do not chase thoughts away. Stop feeding them. Rest, and in that rest, notice that assurance has a soundless voice. You may feel it as a lowering of the shoulders, a breath you did not know you were holding, a clarity that says, no, not that email yet, this call first. That is guidance. That is prayer without words. Now you will forget. You will be faithful at breakfast and lost by 10. Do not, I beg you, bring a whip into this. When you notice you have been away, that noticing is already the beginning of return. Say nothing against yourself. Simply I. The return is the practice. The prodigal's walk home was not graded by elegance. It was measured by direction. Each time you return, even if the interval has been hours or days, you are not starting from zero. You are re-entering a relationship that never broke on God's side. In this way, failure ceases to be a verdict and becomes a bell. The moment you hear the bell, turn. To make this rhythm real, attach it to the bones of your day. Doorways can become altars. Every time you pass through one, within I, hands can become reminders. Each time you wash them, within I, the Father within me doeth the works. Machines can become monks. When the phone buzzes before you answer, I. When the email sends, I. When the kettle sings, I. At noon, do not lose yourself in a religious program. Take 3 minutes, close the door if you can, or leave it open and close the eyes within. Whisper nothing, just rest as branch in vine. In the afternoon, as the mind grows dull or irritable, do not lash it. return. In the evening, do not perform an audit of failures. Sit, and give thanks for 2 or 3 places where presence evidently governed. Then sleep in, If you wake in the night, and some nights we all do not write a script of fears. Rest there and let the presence be the lullaby. Someone will ask, but isn't this the straight and narrow, and isn't that tight? The straight and narrow is not moral tightness. It is singleness of reliance. It is the refusal to scatter your trust like seed on stony places. It means this: once you have found that God realized is your source, you give up all other sources, not people, not kindness, not honest work, but the belief that any of these are your life. You can enjoy a job, a friend, a medicine, a skill. Let them all be instruments, but you rely on one life, one wisdom, one love as the governing of your being. That is the narrowness that opens wide, and you do not achieve it by gritting your teeth. You grow into it by returning so often that the old reflex of panic has nothing left to eat. If you attend outward communion, and some of you will, and that is not a crime, let it be a window, not a wall. Step to the table, receive the elements, and within, even as you stand among friends, say, I. Let the bread be a reminder of substance received moment by moment. Let the cup be a reminder of life not measured in ounces but known as presence, and then walk out with Monday on your shoulders and keep the supper in your heart. 100 short remembrances through the week will do more to transform a life than a single hour of solemnity, followed by 6 days of forgetfulness. We are not sentencing ourselves to piety. We are learning to breathe. As this rhythm strengthens, you will discover a quiet, organizing intelligence at work. You will not have to decide everything. The presence will decide in you. The appetite to prove yourself will ease because the invisible applause of God is more satisfying than any microphone. The need to rush will loosen because you cannot be late for a life that is God-governed. Tasks will still be many, but they will be done in a holy pace. And in that pace you will begin to notice people again, the clerk, the child, the one whose eyes you have not met in months because the calendar was boss. Do not force kindness, return, and kindness will do what it does when sap flows. It appears, it flowers, it feeds. Now a word of protection, not as a scold, but as a fatherly warning. As you taste the ease of this, the old mind will offer improvements. It will suggest elaborate schedules, elaborate vows, elaborate comparisons with the neighbor's holiness. Resist. Freedom is hard to win. It is much harder to retain. Keep to the simplicity that God can bless. Abide, remember, return. If you feel pressure, stop. Pressure is not prayer. If you feel superiority, stop. Superiority is not spirit. If you feel shame, stop. Shame is not a shepherd, it is a thief. Return. 1. There the straight and narrow is spacious, and the yoke is easy, and the burden is light. Oh, where did the time go? We have only given you a cupful, but the river is at hand. Do not wait to perfect this in a monastery you may never enter. Begin now, in this very breath, within I consent to presence. Then walk into the ordinary as one who is not a stranger there, because God is the life of dishes and contracts and commutes, as surely as God is the life of altars. Communion becomes a life not by perfecting a ritual, but by returning again and again, until the return is no longer an act you perform, but the consciousness you are. Now, because love must also guard, let us speak of the ways we lose what we have just found, not by rebellion but by drift. For some, this will be a comfort. You have wondered why yesterday's light did not feed you today. For others, it may sting a bit. No one likes to be told that our cleverness has been our mischief. For still others, it will be the final clarity you needed. How to keep the inner Christ from becoming an ornament of memory. Hear this as a fatherly warning, not a scold. Freedom is hard to win. It is much harder to retain. The first danger is subtle and so common we rarely see it. Substituting the memory of an experience for the living experience itself. We taste God in a room like this or by a window at dawn, and then we walk for weeks on the fumes of that remembrance instead of the breath of fresh realization. The manna of yesterday does not keep. You know that. The prayer that fed you last month was the channel for that hour. It is not a relic to be venerated. Lot's wife looked back and turned stiff with salt, frozen in nostalgia for an old certainty. Do not look back for proof of God. Look in now for the life of God. Yesterday's sunrise cannot warm your hands at midnight. The eye within, realized afresh, can. The next detour is spiritual pride. You learn a few holy words, you gather 2 or 3 quiet demonstrations, and, the old self, dressed now in white, would like to admire itself in every shop window. Be warned, the same ego that boasted in its sins will boast in its virtues. The moment you feel the heat of comparison, better than, farther along than, more awakened than, stop. Within, pride is always a signal that the branch is announcing fruit as its personal achievement and forgetting the vine. Without me, the Master said, you can do nothing. With me, fruit appears of its own life. Keep the glory where it belongs. Gratitude diffuses pride like a light dissolves fog. Then there is the chase for phenomena, lights behind the eyes, heat in the hands, words that seem to float across the ceiling. None of these are sin. Some of them are natural side effects like wind in trees when weather changes. But if you begin to seek the wind instead of the weather, if you measure God's presence by fireworks, you have turned from the substance to shadows on the wall. The truth is quiet. Be still and know. The vine does not run around to find proof of sap. It abides. And in abiding, life is evident without display. Another favorite detour is dependence on teachers. God bless every true teacher who points you home, but do not pitch a tent on their doorstep. The infinite way, call it what you will, is not organized. No memberships, no ladder to climb, no badge to wear. The only bond is spiritual. If your progress depends on my voice or any voice, you have traded the inner Christ for a helpful idol. Use teachers as temporary scaffolding. As soon as the structure stands, the scaffolding must come down, not because you despise it, but because it did its work. Turn within. 1. Let the same presence that meets you here become your counselor in your kitchen, your hospital room, your office. Closely related is treating prayer as a technique. You collect formulas, times, postures, and you begin to pull levers hoping to make the universe respond. That is not communion. That is magic by another name. Prayer is not pressure. Prayer is not a trick. Prayer is consent. Prayer is the humble, steady recognition of oneness. I and the Father are one, and the willingness to let that oneness govern thought, word, decision. Techniques can be training wheels for attention. Fine. But the moment the wheels keep you from the ground, take them off. Say I within and rest. Let God be God. And watch this one. Turning freedom into a new identity badge. You escaped a rigid form. Be grateful. But if you now announce, loudly or inwardly, we are the free ones, we are not like those ritual people, you have only traded one uniform for another. The straight and narrow is not superiority. It is singleness of reliance. One source, one presence, one life. Let freedom make you gentler, not sharper. Let it make you more available to love, not more eager to lecture. Scripture gives us 2 sober lights on the path. Lot's wife looked back. Do not let nostalgia for the old security freeze you when God is leading you forward into actuality. Esau sold his birthright for a mess of pottage. Do not sell your realization for quick comfort. When panic arrives, the easy trade is to grasp for any human handle. Flattery, manipulation, an old vice dressed in logic. Guard your birthright. Your birthright is conscious union. If you must choose between a fast relief that requires you to forget God and a slower path that keeps you in God, choose fidelity. You will find that the slower path is often the straightest road to real peace. Therefore, hear the guardrail stated as simply as I can say it. Once you touch inner communion, protect it with single-minded reliance on the presence within. This is spiritual marriage. When you have found the one to whom your life belongs, you give up all others as sources. You may still honor doctors, bankers, friends, skills. Use them as instruments, but do not make a god of any of them. Give up all others as sources. Cling to this one as you do in marriage. A house divided against itself cannot stand. You cannot serve two masters. Panic and presence, manipulation and love. Decide whom you will trust. Decide every hour if need be. Each small decision seals the vow again. Now to the tender conscience. Fidelity is not fanaticism. I am not asking you to tighten your fists. I am inviting you to relax your grasp on substitutes. Fidelity is simplicity. It is the restful habit of one turning, one reliance, returning to I again and again, until the return becomes the atmosphere of your living. You will not become odd. You will become sane. You will not become harsh. You will become kind. You will use the helps of this world, but you will not be used by them, because your heart has a home and your eyes have a single light. If your eye be single, your whole body shall be full of light. Keep these guardrails, beloved. When you forget, return. When you drift, return. When temptation comes dressed as urgency, return. 1. There the inner Christ is not a memory. It is your life now. And in that fidelity, the path that seemed narrow opens like a wide country, and you walk it without fear. So let us close the circle without ending the practice. If I had to say the whole of it in one line, I would say this: the sacrament is realized presence. Bread and wine are only symbols pointing to an inward fact. Communion is not something you take. It is someone you consent to. Christ as living presence, the I within consciously one with the Father. The table is set where you are whenever you open your heart to abide as branch in vine. Now, before we scatter into the night, let us sit together in a brief, holy simplicity. No asking, no shopping list, just receptivity. Within, quietly, silently, say I, not the personal I, not the I of achievement or anxiety, but the I that the Master revealed when he said, I and the Father are one. Inwardly abide. If thoughts move by, let them float like leaves on a stream. Do nothing to them. Attend only to presence. One, as branch in vine, as cup under a quiet fountain. Consent to be filled by what is already here. Life, guidance, love, the gentle authority of God. One breath, 2, 3, 1. The Father within me doeth the works. Let it be so. This is communion. Quiet, undramatic, deeper than sentiment, stronger than ritual. If you came from a Christian altar, keep the hymn if you wish. Keep the calendar if it nourishes you. Keep the phrases of your childhood if they carry love. Only let the inner Christ be the authority. Let the words bend to the presence, not the presence to the words. And if you came with no religion at all, no hymn book, no memory of chalices, come as you are. You lose nothing by not knowing the names. The river does not ask a passport. The same Christ that spoke in Galilee speaks within you as the life of you. The same vine holds your branch. The The same light that visited prophets and fishermen is available in kitchens and offices and on weary sidewalks. This is not membership. No one can join it, and no one can be kept from it. The only bond is spiritual, the bond of realized presence. Let this assurance settle in you. Nothing has been taken from you tonight. No treasure has been removed, no comfort denied. The ceremony has not been emptied, it has been fulfilled. What was outward has been returned to its source within. Bread still may be broken, cups may still be shared. Only now the meaning is no longer out there to be chased. It is here to be realized. The true table is within, and it is set at every moment you consent to presence. So we will rise from this room the way we will rise from our beds tomorrow, by remembering. Do not search for a crescendo. Do not wait for choirs. Let the quiet do its work. In the doorway, in the parking lot, in the first silence of your home tonight, practice this one little thing. Within, not to get, to abide. And as you abide, let love do what love does. Organize, heal, illuminate, correct, embrace. Your life will become the sacrament in motion, substance instead of symbol, life instead of the memory of life. Oh, where did the time go? I meant to say 10 things, and we have only said one in 10 ways. That is all right. If the one thing is clear, the rest will take care of itself. Walk gently. Keep to the simple path. Abide, remember, return. And wherever you find yourself tomorrow, at a table with bread and a cup, or at a desk with papers and a pen, know this. The table is set. Consent and eat the living bread. Consent and drink the living life. In that quiet, the communion continues without end.